I can honestly tell you that the more I've learned about God's wisdom, and I say God's wisdom because I can't take any credit for it, the more I've learned about it, it feels to me like I've developed a closer and closer and closer relationship with wisdom. So close that whenever I have difficulty, I know it's almost like I have a very best friend that I can always count on, that will always be loving and responsive to my needs. And all I have to do is go find my friend. Go find my friend, and my friend will help me with anything I'm struggling with. Now, sometimes I'm like anybody else. I get so caught up in my thinking, I forget I have a friend that knows all the answers. I forget he or she is right there behind me. And all I have to do is, instead of looking out at the world and thinking about everything that's going wrong, all I have to do is turn around and go, oh, okay. I don't know. I mean, that occurred to me the other day, that I can honestly tell you, I'm more interested now in this presence of wisdom than my own problems. And when that happens, I tell you, it feels like you're off the hook. You don't have to solve your problems. Your friend has all the answers. You don't have to figure out what to do about something that's not going well. If you listen a certain way, you'll hear your friend is always there speaking to you, guiding you. And most of the time, it speaks to you in a language that doesn't have words. It's a feeling and a movement in a certain direction. Okay. I'm going to tell you a few stories, and then I'm going to hopefully tie them all in together, and then we'll have plenty of time for chit-chat. Because I think that's the best way to learn anyways. You just chit-chat about this and go, oh. I fell in love with a certain flower. I'm not a gardener, but it's like a vine. Do you know what a morning glory is? You guys know what morning glories are?
They're beautiful vines.
It's a vine, and they grow like crazy. They grow really fast, and there's these little thin vines that have nice little green leaves, and then all of a sudden, whew, these trumpet, blue and white, delicate flowers pop out of it. Okay, so I fell in love with these because I did a lot of hiking in the country, and I'd see these vines, and I'd go, oh, I would love to have those at my house. So I go to the store, and I find a packet of morning glory seeds. And I read on the back, they grow really fast. They'll grab onto things and climb up them. It really works well if you have a trellis. Well, I didn't have a trellis, and I wanted to plant them in the back of our house. So I went and got a little the simplest little wooden trellis I could get. It's like a ladder. And I put it against the back of the house. And I dug a little trench. I'm not a gardener. I dug a little, I'm reading the directions on the back of the packet. I want morning glories. I think they're so beautiful. I would love to see them every day. I make a little trench. My wife says, what are you doing? I says, I'm growing morning glories. She said, really? When did you get interested in gardening? I said, I don't know. I love morning glories. What can I say? And I drew a little trench, and I put the seeds in. And they're teeny little seeds. Now, Put those in, cover them over, put in a little fertilizer, put in some water. In a few days, all these teeny little green shoots were sticking up along that, a lot of them sticking up. I'm going, I'm growing flowers. Hey kids, come here. Your dad's growing flowers. Look at this. And then the next day I came out and they were a little bit higher. Next day I came out, they were a little bit higher. Next day they had found the first rung. Now I had a thought, because I had been hearing about that God's wisdom is an intelligence that's everywhere where there's spirit. And you know where spirit is? Everywhere. That means this intelligence is built in to life, into everything. That means we are born into a field, vast, infinite field of divine intelligence. We're born into that field, and we're not only born into it, we're born of that field. And that we are like the seeds. There's a little bit there, and then there's more. And then there's more. And then there's more. Where's it all coming from? There was a little teeny seed, and now there's all this green that didn't exist, and now it exists. It's been given birth. It's the miracle of life. Out of spirit, everything arises. This intelligence not only knows how to create everything you see, it knows how to operate whatever it creates. It knows how to create universes, and it knows how to operate universes. This intelligence has no limits and no bounds. It's a divine intelligence. It knows how to turn the planets, right? It knows how to take teeny little things and make more and more and more and more of them until you have a baby. And not only does it know how to create a baby, but all of a sudden some of those cells, as they're being created, become the heart. And then they know how to function as the heart functions. Some know how to become the pancreas, know how to function as the pancreas. So could you imagine if the universe, or if God said, okay, I'm going to take a day off. Intelligence is shut down. You're going to have to run your own pancreas today. I don't even know where it is. Thank God we're being lived. Our heart continues to beat. We're not doing that. Don't be arrogant enough to think you're doing anything to generate and operate life. Right? It's beating your heart. It's generating a vast world of mental activity. I talked to a neurologist. And I said, what's happening inside the head? And he said, energy is being created like crazy. And then it's dancing around through your head at the speed of lightning. Do you ever wonder why you can't figure out what you're thinking? Look, it takes thought for me to move my hand. You know how much, this is very scientific. If there wasn't a dance of energy happening in my head, I couldn't move my hand. Where's that energy coming from? It's coming from that same field of intelligence. I talked to a biologist. I'm curious about, I'll come back to the morning glories. Talked to a biologist, and I said, here's the human heart. When I was a kid, I heard it was impossible to make a perpetual motion machine because friction would wear things down, and so people have been trying. They said, we'll give you $1 million if you make a perpetual motion machine, and they always start out fast and gradually slow down and then eventually stop because of friction. I said, the human heart seems to be a human perpetual motion machine. It never stops moving the whole time you're alive. I said, you're a biologist. What beats the heart? And he goes, well, Dicken, the heart is just a muscle, and it's contracting. So a heart is just a big muscle contracting, and that pumps the blood out into your body. You know what my next question was? Because I'm interested in what causes things. What causes the muscle to contract? And he goes, well, the cells in the heart are called striated cells. They're long and skinny. They're called striated cells. I learned something. And when a muscle contracts, it's just the cell shortening. What's my next question? Thank you. What causes the cell to shorten? He says, well, it's really quite something. There's a sudden burst of, it takes energy to do this, like it takes energy to close my hand. It takes energy for the cell to shorten. It's like doing crunches, you know? And he said, well, there's a burst of energy that happens suddenly within that cell, and the cell utilizes that burst of energy to contract. Whoa. What's my next question? What causes a sudden burst of energy to happen within your cell? He sits back. He goes, well, a lot of us talk about a life force, a biological life force. And I said, well, what's the life force? And he says, it's pure energy that's capable of generating more energy. Because something has to generate the energy that bursts in the cell, right? There's got to be a generator. Do you know what my next question was? What creates the biological life force in people that allows us to have energy happening, living us and moving us? And he gets really quiet. And he says, you know what, Dicken? In my whole career, no one has ever asked me that question. He says, you're really asking, where does life itself come from? And I said, yeah, biology, bio, life, ology, study of. You guys are in the profession of studying life. Do you ever talk about where it comes from? He said, well, no, not really. He says, I guess if I had to answer that question, I'd have to say that what creates the energy that allows life to exist, you have to start talking about God. Okay, now what I'm going to suggest to you is that right at this moment, that divine intelligent energy is still living through each of us. When it shows up within us, we call it wisdom. Okay, now I'll come back to the morning glory story, because I want you to begin to get a sense that this intelligent life force is everywhere and operating everything that exists. Everything, no exception. Okay. The morning glories grow up, they wrap around, they're not dumb. They got an anchor to go higher. They wrap around the bottom rung. They go, well, that's cool. And then they keep going. They find the next rung. They know where, how do they know where the rung is? And they go right to it. Every one of them. They don't go off in like wild directions. They go right up to the next rung, wrap around that. And then one day I go out and I look and I say, whoa, this thin little green moving thing suddenly has something coming out of it. And I watch, and in a couple of days, I see it's a leaf. And then I notice that in the corner of every leaf, between the stem and the leaf, something else starts to come out. And it comes out all a little twisted. And then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then one day, it throws itself open in all its divine glory. It's not stupid. It knows how to turn immediately and find the sun. And then it's got its buddy. It's tuned into the light. And it follows the sun all day until the sun goes down, and then it closes up and rests. Sunrise follows the sun. You know what it's doing? It's taking energy from the sun and converting it through photosynthesis to give it energy to help it to continue to grow and get higher and higher and higher and higher. I see some of you beginning to blossom. I see some of you beginning to open up a little bit to the possibility of letting this divine wisdom, this divine light begin to fill you and transform your physicality into a spiritual vessel. Now, here's my favorite part of the story. It keeps going all the way up. More and more flowers, more and more leaves, more and more vine. Out of nothing comes everything. That's the spiritual truth and mystery of life. Out of nothing, everything arises. But the nothing is pure, intelligent, divine spirit. Every religion I know talks about the divine nothingness. In Buddhism, they call it the emptiness that is the fullness out of which everything arises. Okay? In Taoism, they talk about the fertile void. Right? They're just words and metaphors pointing toward the same divine truth, that there's a divine intelligence behind life that is everywhere, that lives through each and every one of us, and most of the time we don't know it, we don't recognize it, we don't become friends with it, we don't see the beauty of it. We'll get to that in a minute. The morning glories come to the very top of the trellis, and there's between the top of the trellis, say it's from the ground to here, that's about the size of the trellis, up to the rain gutter of our house. It was a big house. Up to the rain gutter of the house was about, I don't know, this far, 4 feet. And they start going up. And then one morning I come out and look at it, and every one of those green shoots had done this. That took a sharp turn to the side. Oh, what's going on? And they keep going and going, and all of a sudden I figured out. The rain gutter coming down the side of the trellis is closer than the eave on top of the house, and it's going to the gutter, and then it wraps around the gutter and goes up to the roof. Now I got a microscope out, or a magnifying lens. I looked at the end of those shoots. I didn't see any eyes. Because divine intelligence doesn't need eyes, it knows. It's a knowing that doesn't require anything of the physical. Okay. Let's bring this down to you and I. This is where it gets interesting. This is where it gets interesting. I think this divine intelligence is revealing itself through us in our lives on a regular basis, and we don't recognize it. So we can't laud and appreciate and praise and have thanksgiving for this divine intelligence. How many times have you forgotten somebody's name? And have you ever gone through your Rolodex or your alphabet? Sometimes I do that. Honestly, I do. I go A, B. Come on, I know their names. C, Charlie, Chimichurri. I'm going through every name I can think of with each letter, and sometimes I'll get it, but sometimes I don't. And what happens when you can't remember and you just go, oh, okay. How often does wisdom go into your filing bank, your memory bank, find the answer and bring it to you? It happens all the time. You know what? Here's another little example. I'm going to start with little examples, and then I'm going to tell you how it goes all the way up to examples of enlightenment and realization. Because we're just going to start with the ordinary way in which wisdom shows up in people's lives. I don't like alarm clocks. I don't know why. I think the people who invent alarm clocks think about how they can find the most obnoxious sound to torture you when it goes off in the morning. Because any alarm clock I've ever had goes, or it goes, oh. And when I'm asleep and I hear that, I'm very sensitive. And it's like it scares the living bejeebers out of me. And I jump, and for the next hour, I'm out of sorts. And my wife says, what's wrong? And I say, the alarm clock. Okay. That was years ago. I set my alarm every day. And I can only remember a few times when I've heard it go off. Because for whatever reason, something wakes me up a few minutes before it goes off. I am asleep, and wisdom is having its way with me. Going, here, I'll take care of that, Dicken. You sleep. Now, it seems to be the more trust and faith you have in wisdom, the more it shows up in your life. That's why we talked about this as faith. I can tell you honestly, I didn't have a whole lot of faith that I was connected to wisdom, that it would solve any problem I had. So I had to figure it out. That's what worry is. Worry is not having faith that you're connected to a friend who's right here behind you, that when you are open and quiet, it will speak to you. Wisdom has nothing to do with age. The wisdom I'm talking about, there is a wisdom that can have to do with learning and age, but the wisdom I'm talking about, the innate natural intelligence behind life, has nothing to do with age. A mother brought her 7-year-old son to see me. It turns out she was someone like me who was a real worrier. And she had spent a lot of time thinking in a way that made her anxious. And she says, Dicken, I don't know, my son, he's like a little adult. I'm worried about him. I'm not even sure he's a kid. He's 7 years old. He doesn't like to play with the kids. He only likes to talk to adults. He has conversations. I don't know. Can you test him and find out if this kid's okay? And I said, I don't do testing. I don't believe in it. I said, I'll tell you what, I would be glad to meet with your son. And I will tell you, I'll give you my professional opinion on how healthy I think he is. I'm sitting in my office. This 7-year-old boy walks in the door, and he walks straight over to me, and he stands right in front of me. And I can honestly say, I haven't met many people in my whole life who were as completely, fully present as this little 7-year-old boy. And he goes, oh, hi, you must be Dicken. It's really nice to meet you, Dicken. How's it going? Now, you know how sometimes you can tell when somebody says, how's it going? You can tell they don't even want an answer. So you don't even give them one. You just say, oh yeah, I'm fine. And some people, they go, how you doing? You go, oh, well. I could tell he was serious, so I took him serious. And so I said, well, you know, this is going on, and this is going on, and I'm feeling this way. And he starts asking me questions. Really? And he gets really curious about me and about what I do. And so, what do you do, Dicken? I said, well, I talk to people. Well, what do you talk to people about? And I said, well, I remind people of something true about them. and what they're connected to. I talk to people about things that help them become a little bit happier in their life. What do you tell them? I'm going, I want to know what this kid says about the principles. And I said, there's something that's, I use big words with him because he looked like he could understand anything I'd say to him. I said, there's something invisible in life that's generating thought inside the head of every human being in every moment. And it knows what it's doing. And it keeps creating thought, and we don't know that it knows what it's doing. So we fight against a lot of the stuff that comes into us because we don't know its true nature. And so we struggle and fight, and we think and we worry and we get upset. And he listens to me talk like this for a while. And then he looks right at me and he goes, oh, Dicken, I know what you mean. I said, really? Tell me. He goes, well, like Dicken, for example, if I don't know what to do with myself, if I'm confused about something, or if I don't know what to do, or if I'm bored, or if I just don't know what to do, he says, sometimes it's sort of like I lay down in my bed, and it's like I fall asleep, but I don't fall asleep. Do you know what I mean? Because I don't think he had met many adults who, when they were really confused and frustrated or upset, that they fell into this deep, quiet space. So he goes, well, do you know what I mean, Dick? And he sort of tested me to see if if I've caught up with his level of understanding. He goes, do you know what I mean? I said, oh. And I got goosebumps all over my body, and I said, could you please say something more about this? See, he's now my teacher. I learned by that time to recognize the signs of when wisdom starts to come through human beings. It resonates as truth. And he says, well, it's like that. It's like I'm going to sleep, but I don't go to sleep. And at a certain point, I always start to feel better. And as soon as I feel better, I know what to do. Guess who had the insight? Thank you very much for coming and relieving me of my suffering. How much do I owe you? Thank you. Can we meet again sometime? I may need some more help later on because I might forget this. And I had an insight because I saw the simplicity that in the quiet of our soul, this divine wisdom is waiting to break through and uplift our spirits and then start moving us in a direction that's healthy, that will help us to thrive in the same way it does for a morning glory, in the same way it does for the planets, in the same way it does for our bodies and trying to move us toward physical well-being. That's called an immune system. It's doing everything it can to keep moving you toward health. So for the next few months, every time I had difficulty, well, it's like I'm going to sleep. You know how we talk when you wake up to the fact of thought? There's a surrender or letting go, and you begin to have less of that thinking on your mind, and you fall temporarily in the moment into a quiet space that's always there underneath the noise of our personal thought system. Our personal thinking being the thinking that we are doing. When that falls away, there's room for something new to break through and move us and guide us and blossom us and leaf us and grow us and evolve us, as Keith says. We all have that connection already, and it's operating. If I could talk to any of you, I would say, there's your wisdom. There's your wisdom. Do you know you can't cross the street without wisdom? Without wisdom, you'd have no common sense, because often the way what comes through us when our minds are open is just, oh, I could do this. Oh, this makes sense. Oh, this feels right. When our minds are all cluttered with a lot of our personal thinking, you get so confused, you never know what to do. Right? So, oh, this makes sense. So crossing the street takes this wisdom, intelligence will help us cross the street. We think we're doing it. We're not. I watch a friend of mine, her name is Leslie. She is one of the best mothers I've ever seen. She is so good with her kids. She just seems to know what to do and how to deal with any kind of crisis her kids are getting into. And believe me, they were very active kids and always getting into things and fighting and stuff going on and just, life. And she just was always just sort of calm. And I say, Leslie, you got to help me out here. Come on, what are you doing? And she says, well, I look at my kids, and if I am feeling like this, I know it's like I'm falling asleep. And then I get quiet, and then I feel better, and then I know what to do. So how she said it was, well, Dicken, if I'm upset, I just wait for a minute until my head clears, and when it clears, then I feel better and I know what to do, and I just do whatever occurs to me. And she says, and if I'm in a quiet, nice feeling already, I just trust whatever occurs to me and I just do it. So either I wait a second and then do whatever occurs to me, or I do whatever occurs to me. But it always happens from this feeling. And Sid Banks, my teacher, said something that hit me like a ton of bricks. Wisdom is always comes through into human consciousness via a positive feeling. Now, a positive feeling can be as simple as, how sometimes you're so upset, and then all of a sudden you realize you're upset, you take one step back from that thinking, already you're wiser. Already what's going to come out of your mouth is going to be better. It's going to work out better. There was actually some people that went around and taught kids in school, when you have an emotional reaction, it lasts for about 6 seconds. So if instead of acting as soon as you feel that way, you wait 6 seconds, it'll be a completely different reaction. Well, they made that up about 6 seconds. It could be an instant. Sometimes I'll get so upset with somebody, or my wife, or my kids, I get so upset, and then I realize it's thought, and I just wait for a second. And it's like I'm going to sleep, but I don't go to sleep. Already I'm feeling better. I'm a little more relaxed. Maybe I'm not so tight. I'm not so angry. I'm a little more relaxed, so there's more wisdom coming through. The more relaxed I get, the more wisdom comes through. The more open I get. So that you can say, when we're in pure consciousness, when we step out of our personal thinking into our soul and we're wide open and receptive, is when we have the greatest access to divine intervention. Now that's just how I'm seeing it. They wake up to thought, fall into pure consciousness, and pure consciousness is where God meets the human and is already waiting always. When your little ego is out of the way, it's waiting to then help guide you. Okay, here's an example. One more example, then we'll have questions. Tuesday night, my wife goes out and sings with a big group of people. And they make absolutely beautiful, beautiful music, and they do it with orchestras, and it's magnificent. I have not missed one of her concerts. I've only missed one of her concerts, and she's in a couple every year since I've known her. We've been married 46 years. I've only missed one concert since 1966, even before we got married. So she goes out to rehearsal Tuesday night. Now, I'm in a particularly low mood. You know what you're like when you're in a low mood? And I wasn't feeling so great, and I was in a low mood. And I can be sort of pathetic when I'm in a low mood. I can sort of whine. Like, do you have to go? Come on, Coisy, do you have to go? Can't you stay? We could have some fun. We could do something fun. We could go for a walk together. We could, I don't know, we could watch a movie together. We could go eat some nice food. And I'm trying to bribe her, basically. And that was one of those occasions that I did not realize I was living in 100% thought-created reality. I really thought, that she was going to be my salvation. If she stayed there, I'd feel better. If she left, I'd be destitute and lonely for the rest of my life and pathetic. She knows when I'm in a low state. So she doesn't take it personally. So she goes, "Oh, I'm sorry you're not feeling good, sweetie. I'm going to go sing. Hope you have an enjoyable evening. See you later." And right away, my little personal thinking starts going crazy. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? I should do something constructive. I should read a good book. And then in this really low state, I go, oh, I don't feel like reading. I should. Oh, but I don't feel like it. Oh, come on, Dicken, you. And then I started having more of this kind of inner dialogue, Well, I could go for a walk and get some exercise. And it's like, oh, I'm too tired. Maybe I'll just lay here. Oh, yeah, go ahead, lay here, you lazy bum. Here you have a great opportunity. Your wife's gone. You can do something productive. Went on and on and on and on. I could go to watch a movie by myself. Oh, yeah, by yourself. Oh, that's great. You know what it's like? Do you know what this is like when you're like? You're in a low state and you're really in your personal thinking, which means you're doing a lot of thinking. You're doing it. Personal thinking is always thinking that takes you out of the present moment. Wisdom does not come via personal thinking. It's something very interesting to understand. A lot of people think that if you stop thinking, you stop thinking. You don't stop thinking. You stop being engaged in personal thinking. There's another kind of thinking. Sid used to say, when your personal mind goes to sleep, God mind comes through and lives you and thinks you and grows you. And so when our minds get quiet, without trying and without thinking and without doing anything, things come to us. They're being given to us. They're being created fresh. It's only in fresh and new thinking that we have insight, inspiration, aspiration. We feel love. It's only through that kind of thinking that comes to us that you can feel love. You can't be in your head thinking about things and feel love. Right? I watch most couples now. It's unbelievable. They're together. Like you go to a restaurant, you see a couple together in a restaurant, and the other day, honestly, the guy's playing a video game, and his wife is trying to talk to him. And he thinks he's having a conversation, but I could tell the things he was saying had nothing to do with what she was saying. He was just trying to, keep her from bugging him, just like, And I look around the restaurant and I couldn't find people that were just genuinely, seriously, really listening. There were a lot of people who were talking to us. Nobody was listening. Everybody was just waiting their turn to say their thing, right? When I started to realize that, I started to realize when I'm with my wife, I want to move in the direction where it's like I'm going to sleep, but I don't go to sleep, so that my personal thinking gets quiet, and always I start to feel closer to my wife. The only thing in the way of intimacy, personal thought. I could walk into anybody's home and I can look and see how involved people are in their personal thinking and tell you why it is that people are not connecting. When I work with teenagers, you know what their biggest complaint is about parents? No matter what I say, they don't listen. They're thinking and talking, thinking and talking. Right? when our mind's quiet, even for 1 millisecond, this divine intelligence is patiently waiting to break through into human consciousness and offer us some help and guidance. Okay? Back to the story. My wife goes off the thing. I'm feeling sorry for myself. I'm in my personal thinking, and I'm getting worse. And I'm pretty pathetic in retrospect. At the time, I didn't think so. And then all of a sudden, I realized and remembered wisdom. My best friend. The one who brings love and understanding and healing and ideas and thinking that's helpful. And that you have a deeper relationship with wisdom when you begin to, in a sense, look in that direction instead of looking toward the world and personally thinking about it. You can't find wisdom in the world. It's spiritual. So you let go of your rabid attention to the world and its objects and its things and the people and there begins to be space, and the divine loves space. It's room for its subtle, gentle, loving, kind presence to break through that space. In the same way, the sun loves all of us, and it waits patiently behind the clouds until the clouds just for a brief moment part, and then it shines through and brings more light and warmth and nourishment. So that's why often wisdom is compared with light. Bringing more light into the world. And it's something that any of us can do if we listen to the advice of our 7-year-old sages and our teachers. There's all of you know teachers who are wonderful, wonderful, will remind you of your true nature and what direction to look in to receive more divine help and guidance. You could call falling into an open, receptive state, free of personal thought. You could call that being in a prayerful state, or a meditative state, or a contemplative state, open to being influenced by something greater than your own personal little ideas about what you should do, and your worries and your judgments and all the contaminations that Keith so eloquently talked about. Okay, so here I am. I'm sitting there feeling in my personal world, and then I realize that it's thought. And it's like I'm falling asleep. And all of a sudden, now I've noticed this happen without even having any thoughts I could hear, because most of knowing is knowing. It's not words. Wisdom is not found in the words. For me, wisdom is a movement in the same way it moves the plant, the morning glory, up and around and over and this way and open. It's a movement. It's not words. It's a guiding system. This intelligence is always trying to move us toward greater love and understanding if we get our personal egos out of the way. So for one brief second, my ego was out of the way and wisdom started moving me, and without even realizing it, I'm standing up and I'm walking out of the house, and I walk down to the ocean, because the ocean is down in front of my house just a few minutes, and I walk down to the ocean and I sit down on the beach and I look out, and it is so beautiful. And in that moment, my mind begins to quiet even more. It's like, you see how wisdom knows what to do? See how wisdom knows how to take me in a direction? Now watch what wisdom had in store for me. I did not plan this or think any of this out. This was not Dicken personally deciding to do this. This is not my will, but thy will be done. This is getting out of the way so that I can be lived more fully by this divine intelligence. I'm at the beach. My mind is getting quieter. I'm beginning to appreciate the beauty around me a little bit more. I'm still in sort of a low mood, right? I'm still grumpy, but I'm not, there's a little more space. And remember how I said wisdom loves space, loves it, waits for it patiently, lovingly, caringly, waiting for the slightest opportunity for you to set your ego aside just long enough so that there's room for it to blossom through you or live through you, right? And then all of a sudden it's picking me up again. And I walk back to the house and I think I'm going to go into the house, and before I know it, I'm in the car and I'm driving. I go, I guess wisdom is taking me for a drive. And I drive down to our little town. It's about the same size as the one right out here. It's not long, it's short. And I'm driving into town. And all of a sudden I find myself just parking at the edge of the ocean channel that runs through town. And I'm just sitting there, and it's like God has plans for me to enjoy nature and beauty a little bit longer because I'm still. And I watch the boats go by. And I watch the eagles flying through the sky. And I start appreciating and marveling over God's creation. I'm beginning to move out of my personal world into a world where I'm not thinking about myself anymore. I'm beginning to look out instead of worrying about myself and what I should do and how I should be and what should happen and how people should be and how the world should change to make me happier. That's all ego, right? So as that falls away, you come into the world more fully, you can participate more fully with more love and understanding, more appreciation, more gratitude. Then all of a sudden I'm driving again down through the little town and I see one of my best friends. See, this wisdom knows. This wisdom knows better than any of us knows. If we have faith and trust and openness and allow that wisdom to guide us. And it's such a little town, you can park for 10 minutes in the middle of Main Street and talk to your best friend, and there's no cars piling up behind you. You got to know how small this town is that I live in. There's 700 people, right? I didn't know they made towns that small. Right? I have a great talk with my friend, then I'm driving down the street, and I'm driving out of town, and there's a teeny little grocery store, and all of a sudden I talk about wisdom. All of a sudden, it occurs to me. Now, you notice how I say it occurs to me? Remember I said wisdom comes when it is coming to you rather than you. You can't analyze or think your way to wisdom. It all of a sudden occurred to me, my wife told me she needed 3 things at the store. I said, I guess I'm going shopping. It wasn't actually on my list of fun things to do while my wife is out singing, but I'm going shopping. And I go in and I find the 3 things that she's looking for, and I have those, and then I look and they're renting movies, and I see a very inspiring, beautiful movie that I've wanted to see. And it sort of like jumps off the shelf and says, you get this reward now, because you've been trusting in wisdom, now you get this reward. And I take the movie and I go home and I'm watching the movie, and just as the final credits go down, wouldn't you know, the front door opens up, my wife walks in and she goes, hi Dicken, how was your evening? I said, I had a delightful evening. I let wisdom have her way with me, and I went down the beach and enjoyed the beach. I went for a nice walk, and then I drove into town and I watched the boats going up and down, and it was beautiful. I love our little town that we live in. And then I ran into my good friend that I haven't seen for a long time. We had a great talk. And by the way, I picked up the things you needed at the store. Right? And then, oh yeah, I saw this great movie. You gotta watch it. You're gonna love it. We'll watch it together sometime. Now remember, I was in a horrible mood. You see, wisdom is always available to us. You can, this is what I'm discovering, you can be in a very difficult mood, and in a moment of remembrance of God, if you will, in a moment of realizing that you're just caught in personal thought and you have the willingness to let that go, and the stress and the tension begin to ease just a little bit, that's letting you know there's a little more space, so there's a little more room for wisdom, and then you start to recognize the way you are moved beautifully. Now let me tell you, this would be just as true if you were in a situation filled with people and you couldn't leave the room. In a moment of quiet, wisdom will tell you who to go talk to. Wisdom will tell you when to keep your mouth shut. Wisdom will tell you when to open your mouth. Wisdom, if you're open to it, will bring you ideas and thoughts and words to say to somebody. It takes care of everything. And I will tell you, this is just as true if somebody walked into your house with a gun and put it up against your head. In a moment where there is space and faith, wisdom will bring you the thinking you need to deal with that situation as wisely as possible. The more you understand that wisdom has your back, I mean this, that wisdom has your back, and that all it takes is an openness to its guiding presence and a recognition and a appreciation. This is why some people can have very difficult lives and live in gratitude, because they recognize all the myriad ways which, in their openness, wisdom continues to guide them through dealing with the most difficult challenges and circumstances. And I have found this to be true. I walked into a war zone with machine guns in my chest and bombs going off, and I learned more about wisdom guiding me in that situation than in peaceful little Lacanner watching the boats go by. So it's not, wisdom is an intelligence that has no limitation. It has nothing to do with circumstance. It's on your side. It's always there, patiently waiting for you to give space for it to live you wisely and guide you directly. It's the best thing in the world. I recommend it highly. I don't know. Yeah, I'll stick around for some questions. And if you need to leave, that's fine. If you need to leave, just fine. You've been waiting.
Yes, he had to handle that 7-year-old boy. His mother had that issue.
How do you
Handle that mother with a 7-year-old boy.
Oh, she was asking about the mother with the 7-year-old boy. I went back to the mother. And I said, I had a wonderful talk with your son, and it's my professional opinion that your son is really fine, is going to be fine. Given what he knows, I guarantee you, I would stake my professional career on this, he's going to do fine. We started talking, and I said, well, you know, you could learn some things that would really help you with your worry, and they switched places. And she became my client, and in no time she was becoming free of her worries and trusting more in wisdom. If you have more questions, come on up.